So not knowing exactly how things should look, what shape they should take, is actually maybe part of the scenario, part of the unfoldment. Because when the collective, when the, let's say, critical mass reaches the point when greater part of humanity collectively will desire all this, and we are already desiring all this, it's just some of us are more conscious about it than others. As the mother, you know that every mother wants best for her child. You don't need to go to the university for that. It is given, isn't it? So that kind of motherly attitude is the attitude that all of us have deep within our own innermost feminine part. Feminine as the very quality of that nurturing. And this is what most of us recognizing and realizing now. So yes, when the critical mass is reached, there will be this qualitative shift, and then the things will naturally start taking shape and form in, and, you know, into the patterns that is most desirable. So do not worry that you don't know exactly how things should look, even in your own life. As long as you move in the right direction within your heart, rest is assured that all this will take the best possible shape you need for your own happiness. Because you put happiness as the priority. As the priority. It's like you already desiring the ultimate. Once you're desiring the ultimate, everything else on the way will form and fall into place. If we desire for little thing here, little thing there, our awareness can get distracted and overshadowed, and in that process diluted, so we kind of forget what really is the very purpose of this existence, of this human incarnation, of this life shared and partake, you know, in that beautiful act of sharing, relating.
So the practical thing to do is just to follow what the heart says or does, or what the heart desires naturally. There's nothing you can cultivate to do.
No, of course,
meditation is a cultivation.
Not necessary. Yes, meditation, when done properly, does cultivate all this. It naturally realigns our entire being towards that greater happiness, because this is what happens in meditation and in all inward directed practices. Naturally, our being is realigned from being overwhelmed by the sensory excitement, by the sensory perceptions, towards where the senses themselves gain their power. So it's the very necessary term. In Sufism it's called zikr. The true meaning of a zikr, that meditation, is not that it's just meditation. The true meaning of zikr is that turning within. So that turning within literally can realign that direction of your heart's compass.
Is that the wording, is it zikr?
Well, zikr has many different connotations, but the very meaning of it is turning within. So it's the very meditation. Many translate it as remembrance of God, but it could be still understood in terms of outward remembrance of God somewhere else. What in fact true zikr, it's the turning within, because God is within, it's nowhere else. So it will realign the compass of your heart naturally towards greater happiness, because that's the very, very spontaneous outcome of all meditations. So the desires are nurtured and watered in meditation in the way that they are the desires which are the most life-supporting and the most evolutionary. So it's like there is a lot of desires out there, but whenever we repeatedly go inward, this and that desire becomes secondary, and this is where your question comes in the first place. So before, you used to desire this, you used to desire that, you wanted to have this, you wanted to have that. Nothing wrong with it. It's a very different subject. What matters in our discussion now here is that with repeated exposure or with repeated experience of inward peace, contentment, and quietude, the secondary desires fall away. They might be still there on the background somewhere. Oh, it would be nice, isn't it? But they are no longer overshadowing the main desire. Until all desires will gradually recede on the foreground completely. And there will be only one desire left, one desire for total freedom, for life lived in fulfillment, in bliss of oneself.
But for me, it's not so much myself, it's just that there's so much suffering happening. There's so much pain, and I feel it.
Listen to this then. You see, when you realize, when you understand, and you said it just now, that all this is we are responsible for it. This is where we're going to take it from, and this is where we're going to have the traces of how it all happened. Because it's already, there is this very, very deep understanding in you that you are not separate. So that whatever action you do contributes to a greater whole. Isn't it? And you know that certain actions are not good because you know their consequences, or at least you know their consequences through a certain span. But let's say in case of certain products, certain manufactured goods, they're not that good. Now let's look at and go straight to the root of it all. Consciousness of a human being is not a separate kind of identity or separate kind of unit. It is still an expression of greater consciousness. It's still the same absolute expressing itself at this very moment as human life on this planet. But when we say human life, we immediately running a danger of falling into some kind of intellectual or conceptual idea that somehow human life is an isolated event from the overall life on the planet, if we look at it in terms of its greater ecosystem. So the erroneous actions of humans, of man's actions, already are rooted in something which is inherent in consciousness itself. So what we want to go all the way to that level where that erroneous trajectory took place, so that we can rectify it at that level. Otherwise, we're running the danger of keep plastering problems with yet this or that temporal solution. Fundamentally speaking, we need to change an attitude towards we live here, full stop. But that is not going to take within just 1 or 2, 3 or 10 years. It will take place with the way generations are being brought up. So it's a process to which you willingly already participate, to which you already given yourself to. Because each time when you transcend, each time when you go inward, you're tracing all the way in, all the way back to that where that trajectory came forth in the first place. So the solutions will spontaneously come from the same place where that very trajectory went off course, where it went off, let's say, evolutionary line towards a destruction. And it is many mystics, spiritual teachers, masters of various traditions emphasize over and over that the only true healing to this world can be done on that level. That the true healing can only be done on the level of the internal healing of each individual within, and when that reaches global proportions, then it will spontaneously spread, just like a very powerful wave that will touch everyone, even those who have never considered themselves to be spiritually oriented. But those people who are in the forefront of spiritual practice, those who gave themselves to spiritual, let's say, betterment, to spiritual evolution, they are the ones who allow consciousness to carry this new wave, because it needs to. Consciousness doesn't act as a free spirit floating around. This is a big mistake, very anachronistic, religiously impregnated understanding of the spirit. Spirit can only express itself through this very living, breathing reality. Through everything, through trees, through animals, and through us, human beings. It expresses itself simultaneously. So that where we find ourselves, that conflict, you experiencing deep within, and that's the cry. This is why you couldn't help. There was this cry of the soul. That cry of the soul is echoing the very cry of the soul of the Mother Earth, the cry of the soul.
I know, and I feel it. That's what I actually feel. You know,
so don't stop just
we're
there.
all having that call because Mother Nature is putting that, like, she's resonating with that, and we're just
absolutely
being the instruments that she plays through, really.
Well, and we don't just stop there. We don't just stop on that emotional, on that level of the feeling. We don't just stop there, because it's very important that we transcend even that emotional impulse, though very beautiful, because that connects you deeply through that very open wound, connects you deeply to the very essence of what you are. Because the solution will come from that stillness, from that poise, from that inward clarity. And it will come not just on the level of when you come out of it into the field of action, okay, now I know where to put, let's say, my waste, and where to put, how to separate. No. That has its own momentum. It will come on a level where, as energy. Do you understand that? It will come as something which will manifest and has energy and power of its own, which carries new potentiality. This is what I've been trying to address over and over, is that we need to recognize alternatives, ways of coexistence in the field
There are.
exactly.
It's just, like I said before, the governments are not
Governments, let's not separate ourselves here from governments. Governments are made of sum total of our aspirations. It doesn't matter the government of the dictatorship, or country that considered itself to be rooted in democratic principles. It is the same expression of, it's always the expression of collective consciousness. It's the sum total of the heartbeats. It cannot be otherwise. This is why every true teacher, every true messenger, every true sage will tell you, you will have exactly the government and the governor who is the manifestation of the collective expressions of each individual aspirations. And that is your governing state. When these aspirations change on and within your own self, that leads gradually to changes in structures, because it's interconnected. This is where I should really be quiet and scientists should talk. This is where scientists should talk more and more, and they do. You remember these conversations in the Science and Non-Duality. You remember what John Hagelin was addressing, the Menes Kafatos and other scientists. They talk exactly about that, that consciousness is one soup, there's underlying ground of creation. We are all interconnected. What comes to be known as government of this or that country, of this or that political party, it's only a natural expression of the sum total of collective aspirations. It's not even what happens in the vote, through the voting system. That's secondary. That's only in effect. The cause is much deeper. This is why spiritually aligned individuals, once that is clicked, you will realize that you change the universe within yourself. That's where the most powerful levers are. This is where the most powerful, let's say, buttons are, the most powerful remote controls are. You change the universe, your whole entire environment, from the remote control, and that control, for the lack of another word, it's your awareness. From the awareness within, the universal laws themselves are subjected to that very awareness. But we should unfold this thing more and more, because it should eventually become very clear to you. You will recognize it deep within your own silence and stillness, how everything that what you call dynamic expression of that silence is actually corresponding to that very silence itself. It is simply structured throughout, and what you find there, you express naturally. So what we live now, that conflict, that dilemma, that what you call disharmony, is what has been perpetually entertained for too long. So we shouldn't really lament of what happened before, even though the ugly signs of it are staring us in our face. We should just go about our daily life and repair at that level where it's not plastering, where it's not yet putting another bondage, although maybe sometimes it's needed as well, bandage. But healing it from within, healing it on that level where the rupture itself took place.